The forest was quiet, but not in the way a peaceful forest might be. It was quiet with a weight, a silence that seemed to press against every branch, every leaf, and even the wind itself. Shadows moved like living creatures curling along the ground, and the air smelled faintly of wet earth and something darker, something old. Lyria pressed herself against the rough bark of a tall oak tree, her breathing shallow, her heart hammering in her chest. The pup in her arms whined softly, nestling closer, trying to find comfort in her warmth. Her ears twitched at the faintest sound, the snapping of a twig, the rustle of leaves. She had to keep moving, had to keep the child safe. The forest was full of dangers, and the longer she stayed in one place, the closer they would come. She wrapped her free arm around the pup, holding it tightly against her chest, feeling the tiny, rapid heartbeat against her own. "Don't worry, little one," she whispered. Her voice trembled, though she tried to sound calm. "I won't let anything happen to you. I promise." The pup's small golden eyes blinked up at her. Lyria's chest tightened. That look, the innocent trust, made the pain in her chest almost unbearable. Just hours ago she had thought she could trust another, thought love could survive. She had been wrong. Cale had been her mate, or at least that's what she had believed. For months they had been bound by the old rites, their spirits connected in ways she had thought unbreakable. But when the time came for him to embrace his responsibility, to accept the pup she carried, he had turned from her. "Cold, distant, cruel, I cannot," Kyle had said, his amber eyes hard, his voice sharp like a blade cutting through the night. "This child, it is not mine. I will not claim it. I will not claim you." The words had torn through her like fire. Lyria had stared at him, disbelief rooting her to the ground. "But the bond," she had whispered, her voice breaking. "We are mates. You cannot—" "I can and I will," he had interrupted, turning his back on her, his broad shoulders retreating. "This is my choice. Leave me. Leave this child. Both of you. Do not return." The memory still burned. Every step she had taken away from him since then had been heavy with grief and shame. The forest had welcomed her with shadows and whispers, as if it knew the sorrow she carried. She had wandered for hours, days perhaps, though time had no meaning in this place. Every rustle of the leaves reminded her of Cale's rejection, and every heartbeat of the pup reminded her of what she still had to protect. She pressed on, stumbling over roots and rocks. The forest seemed endless, twisting in ways that made sense only to itself. Strange shapes flickered in the corner of her eyes, movements that could have been nothing or could have been creatures drawn by the scent of fear and new life. She had heard the stories. Wolves and spirits of the forest, ancient guardians that tested those who dared enter. Some claimed the forest itself was alive, moving and bending paths to punish the guilty or reward the brave. Lyria had no time to worry about the truth of the tales. She only knew that she had to keep going, or the pup would not survive. Night began to fall, the forest darkening with an almost tangible thickness. Lyria's legs ached, her shoulders burned, and her throat was dry. She lowered herself to the ground for a moment, letting the pup crawl closer, its tiny body curling against hers. The child was so small, so fragile, yet somehow fierce in its own quiet way. She could see sparks of something unusual in its eyes, something that seemed ancient, almost knowing. "I don't know what you are," she murmured, brushing a lock of hair from the pup's forehead. "But I promise I will protect you. No one will take you from me." A sudden sound made her head snap up. A low growl, deep and reverberating, came from somewhere beyond the trees. Lyria froze, her heart leaping. The growl was not like the ordinary sounds of wolves in the forest. It carried a weight, a sense of authority and power. She felt the air shift around her like the forest itself was holding its breath. "Stay close," she whispered to the pup, wrapping it tighter in her arms. From the shadows, a figure emerged, tall, commanding, with broad shoulders and eyes that glowed faintly in the dim light. His presence was immense, and though she did not recognize him at first, something in the way he looked at the pup made her heart stop. The man, no, the alpha, did not speak immediately. He simply observed, stepping forward with deliberate, measured movements. Lyria felt a shiver run down her spine. There was power in him, undeniable and absolute, yet it was tempered by something softer, almost hidden behind the stern mask he wore. "You carry the child of Cale," the alpha finally said, his voice deep and steady, echoing slightly in the still forest. "I know this bloodline." Lyria's breath caught. The child in her arms, he knew, but how? She held the pup closer, protective and wary. "Who are you?" she demanded, trying to sound braver than she felt. The alpha stepped closer, his gaze fixed on the pup. I am the one who must see the truth, he said. This child, it is of my line. I have seen it before, though long ago, in a vision I had not thought real until now. This pup carries the power of our ancestors. Lyria's mind raced. Power ancestors? The words sounded impossible, yet there was a conviction in his tone that made her hesitate. She did not trust him. Not yet, but a small part of her wondered if this could change everything. If there was someone else who could recognize the pup, perhaps there was hope. Why should I trust you? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. Kyle, he left us. He did not care. Why should I believe you will? The alpha's eyes softened, just enough for her to notice. Because unlike him, I see what must be protected, he said. And I will not let fear or pride blind me. This child is more than a symbol. It is the key to what has been lost. Before Lyria could respond, a rustle in the shadows made her tense. Something was moving among the trees, silent and fast. Her instincts screamed at her. Danger was near. She tightened her grip on the pup, ready to run or fight if she had to. The alpha's gaze followed the movement, calm but alert. You do not have to face this alone, he said. If you let me help, I can keep the child safe, and I can show you the truth about Kale's choice. Lyria hesitated. Her trust had been broken before. But something in his voice, something in the way he looked at the pup, made her consider it. Perhaps she did not have to walk this path alone. Perhaps there was a chance to survive, to protect her child, and maybe, just maybe, to find answers. A sudden howl cut through the night, distant but powerful, echoing through the forest like a warning. Lyria felt the pup stir in her arms, ears perked and tiny claws digging into her shoulder. We should move, the alpha said, his voice low and urgent. The forest is not kind to those who linger, and there are forces here that do not wish this child to live. Lyria nodded, fear and hope battling inside her. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her grief and the responsibility she carried. The pup squirmed slightly and she looked down at it, feeling an unexpected surge of determination. I will do whatever it takes to keep you safe, she whispered, even if it means facing the darkness itself. The alpha nodded once, and together they stepped deeper into the forest, shadows bending around them, the mist curling like ghostly fingers. Lyria's heart was heavy, yet within it flickered a spark of something she had thought lost forever. Hope. And somewhere, in the distance, unseen eyes watched them, waiting, judging, and stirring the forces that would soon challenge everything Lyria believed she knew. Cliffhanger. As they walked, the alpha glanced down at the pup and whispered something under his breath. A name, a recognition that shook Lyria to her core. I know you, and I know what you are destined to become. Lyria's eyes widened. The forest seemed to close in around them, and the whispers of old magic stirred in the wind. Something ancient, powerful, and dangerous had taken notice. The forest had grown darker since Lyria and the alpha had begun moving deeper into its tangled paths. Shadows clung to the trees like living curtains, and the mist seemed thicker here, curling around their legs and clinging to their fur. The pup slept quietly in Lyria's arms, its tiny chest rising and falling with steady breaths, though its fur occasionally shimmered with a strange golden glow that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of the forest itself. The alpha walked beside her, silent except for the soft crunch of leaves under his heavy boots. Lyria kept stealing glances at him, noting the calm strength in his posture and the intensity in his glowing eyes. She still did not fully trust him, but a strange sense of recognition lingered, as if he belonged here, as if he and the forest had always been connected. After a long, tense silence, he finally spoke. This child is no ordinary pup, he said, his voice low and steady. I have not seen such a lineage in many generations. Kale, your mate, he could not see the truth. Lyria's hands clenched around the pup. Kale, he left us, she said, her voice trembling. He said I should leave, that the child was not his. He rejected us both. The alpha's jaw tightened, but he did not respond immediately. His eyes softened as he looked at the pup, then back at Lyria. Kale's choice was not as simple as you believe. There are forces at work that he could not understand. Forces older than this forest, older than our kingdom, but you are strong, Lyria. Stronger than he ever gave you credit for. Lyria looked at him, confusion and skepticism mingling with a faint hope. Why are you telling me this?
Who are you?
Why should I trust you? He paused, scanning the forest as though he could see through the shadows. I am the Alpha King, he said finally. Kyle is my son, and you carry something that cannot be hidden, something that belongs to our bloodline, that child in your arms. It is the heir of prophecy, one I have waited my lifetime to recognize. Lyria's breath caught. The heir of prophecy? The words felt heavy and strange, yet they carried a weight of truth she could not deny. The pup stirred, glowing faintly again, and for a moment it felt as if the forest itself had leaned closer to listen. Prophecy? She whispered, unsure she wanted the answer. What prophecy? What does it mean for us? The Alpha King knelt slowly, bringing himself to eye level with the pup. His presence was immense even at this close distance, yet there was care in the way he extended a hand toward the child, careful not to touch it without permission. The pup blinked up at him, eyes wide and curious. The prophecy speaks of a child born under shadow and light, he said, his voice almost a whisper, though it carried in the stillness of the forest. A child whose blood will mend the broken kingdom, whose spirit will face the darkness that has haunted our lineage for centuries. That child is here with you. Lyria felt a shiver run down her spine. She had only sought safety for her child, never imagined such a destiny. And yet, seeing the king's eyes filled with certainty and reverence, she could not deny the feeling that this child was special, more than she had known. Why did Kale reject us? She asked, her voice shaking. If this child is so important, why would he turn away? The Alpha King's expression darkened. Fear, he said simply. Fear can make even the strongest falter. Kale feared what the child represented. He feared responsibility, the power within the bloodline and the expectations of the prophecy. But fear does not erase destiny, and it will not erase the bond you share with this child. Lyria swallowed hard, her heart heavy. Fear had destroyed her bond with Kyle, leaving her alone with a tiny, fragile life to protect. And yet something in the Alpha King's voice, something in his certainty, gave her a spark of hope. The forest shifted around them suddenly. A cold wind swept through, rustling leaves and sending shivers down her spine. Lyria instinctively held the pup closer. The Alpha King's eyes narrowed. They are near, he said quietly. Dark forces that would see this child destroyed are watching us. They have been waiting, and they know this child's power is awakening. Lyria's pulse quickened. What do we do? We move, he said firmly. And we prepare. You have strength you do not yet realize, Lyria. The bond you share with this child, your courage and your instincts, they will guide you. But you must trust me, not because you have to, but because it is the only way to survive. She hesitated. Trust had been broken before. Kale had left her, leaving her to face the world alone. And now this man, this Alpha King, spoke of destiny and prophecy. Could she trust him? Her eyes flicked to the pup, seeing the way it looked up at the king with quiet curiosity, as if it knew more than she did. Slowly, she nodded. All right, she said, her voice firm despite the fear in her chest. I will trust you for now, but if you betray us, I will not forgive it. The king inclined his head. I do not ask for blind trust. I ask for courage. That is all I ask. Together they began moving again deeper into the forest. The shadows seemed to watch, to follow, and the mist wrapped around them like a cloak, soft but suffocating. Lyria could feel the weight of history pressing down, as if the trees themselves remembered every betrayal, every battle, every child born into fate. As they walked, the king spoke of the forest, of its spirits and its dangers. The forest is alive, he said. It tests those who enter, judging them for their hearts and their intentions. It will not harm you if it sees truth and courage, but it will not hesitate to punish those who falter or betray the child you carry. Lyria listened carefully, absorbing every word. Every step was a reminder of her responsibility, and every word of the king reminded her that this path was larger than her grief, larger than Kale's rejection. Hours passed, though Lyria had lost count. The forest twisted in ways that seemed impossible, paths appearing and vanishing, the mist rising and falling like breath. The pup slept quietly, glowing faintly, its warmth a comforting anchor against the cold and fear. Finally, they reached a small clearing. Moonlight filtered through the canopy, casting silver patterns on the forest floor. The king knelt again, placing a hand lightly on the earth. Here, he said, we will rest. But do not let your guard down. They are closer than ever, And the child's power, it calls them. Lyria sat beside him holding the pup, feeling the weight of the night pressing in. She stole a glance at the king, seeing the quiet strength in his eyes, the vigilance in his posture. There was something almost human beneath the power, a vulnerability he did not show to the world, and in that moment she felt a strange pull, not fear, not trust, but a connection forged by danger and necessity. "Why me?" she asked softly, her voice almost lost in the night. "Why does this prophecy involve me?" The king's eyes softened. "Because you survived what others could not. Because you love fiercely, even when love betrays you. Because you have the courage to protect what others would abandon. The child needs that courage. The kingdom needs that courage, and I need to see it survive." Lyria's hands trembled as she hugged the pup closer. The weight of his words settled on her, a mixture of hope and fear. Hope that they could survive this night, that the child could fulfill its destiny. Fear that the dark forces watching them would not allow it. Suddenly, a faint rustle broke the stillness. The pup stirred, ears flicking, eyes glowing brighter. The king's eyes narrowed. "They are very near," he said, rising to his feet. "And soon you will have to face them." Lyria's heart raced, but she squared her shoulders. She had survived betrayal, abandonment, and fear. She could survive this too. She would protect her pup at any cost. And then, as if the forest itself agreed, a shadow moved at the edge of the clearing, large and silent. Something waited, watching, testing, preparing to strike. The king stepped closer to Lyria, his presence shielding her in a way words never could. "Prepare yourself," he said, his voice low and steady. "The night is far from over, and the forces that seek to destroy this child will not wait." Lyria tightened her grip on the pup, feeling the warmth and power radiating from it. She took a deep breath, letting courage replace fear. Whatever was coming, she would not falter. The forest held its breath. And so did she. Cliffhanger. From the shadows, two glowing eyes watched them, filled with hunger and malice. A whispering wind carried a voice only the pup seemed to understand. A voice that promised danger and challenge beyond anything Lyria had faced. The night was alive in a way Lyria had never felt before. Every rustle of leaves, every crack of a twig seemed magnified in the still darkness of the forest. The pup stirred in her arms, its tiny body quivering as if it sensed the tension that threaded through the trees. Lyria's grip tightened instinctively, her eyes scanning the shadows that pressed closer with each passing moment. Beside her, the Alpha King moved with the quiet confidence of one who knew the forest as well as his own pulse. His glowing eyes caught the faintest movements among the trees, predicting threats before they appeared. Lyria had begun to rely on his presence, even as she struggled with the memory of Kale's betrayal. There was something steady, almost unshakable about him, and she couldn't deny the strange comfort it gave her amidst the fear. "They are close," the king said, his voice low and calm. "Do not lower your guard. The forest tests all who enter it, but these are not ordinary creatures. They are drawn to the pup's power." Lyria swallowed hard. "Power? What power?" she whispered, glancing down at the tiny bundle in her arms. The pup's golden eyes shone faintly in the moonlight, glimmering with a light that seemed almost alive. It twitched almost as if it understood more than she did. "The bloodline of this child is ancient," the king explained. "It carries the strength of our ancestors, the same strength that once ruled this kingdom and held back the darkness. That power is awakening, and wherever power awakens, danger follows." Lyria felt a shiver crawl up her spine. She had always known her child was special, but she had not imagined anything like this. Every instinct screamed at her to protect the pup, to keep it hidden, yet the forest seemed to push them forward, as if destiny itself demanded they move ahead. Suddenly, a low growl rolled through the clearing. Shadows stretched and shifted along the edges of the forest. Lyria stiffened, pressing the pup closer. The growl came again, louder this time, closer, and Lyria realized they were surrounded. "They are testing us," the king said, his eyes narrowing. "Stay close. Do not panic." From the darkness emerged creatures unlike any Lyria had seen. They were wolf-like but twisted, shadows clinging to fur, eyes glowing with a hungry red light, teeth bared. They moved as one, circling, probing, waiting for weakness. Lyria's heart pounded. She had faced predators before, but these were different. They carried a sense of intelligence, of purpose. The forest itself seemed to shiver in their presence. She took a deep breath and held the pup tighter, feeling a spark of warmth from its tiny body. As if it were trying to reassure her, the Alpha King stepped forward, placing himself between Lyria and the pup and the approaching shadows. His presence radiated authority and strength. "You will not touch them," he said, his voice low and commanding. The shadows paused, hesitation flickering in their movements. Lyria watched in awe as the king raised a hand, and the air around him seemed to shift. A faint glow surrounded him, like moonlight caught in a net, and the shadows recoiled slightly. He had power she could feel, raw and ancient, yet controlled. "Do not underestimate them," he warned, glancing at her. "And do not underestimate the pup. It will need you." Lyria's stomach tightened. She had relied on her own strength for so long. But now she saw that they would need more than courage to survive this night. They would need trust. Trust in each other and trust in the child. The shadows lunged suddenly, faster than Lyria could react. She ducked instinctively, holding the pup close. To her surprise, the pup stirred and let out a tiny cry, a sound that seemed to echo with more than innocence. The glow in its eyes flared, brighter this time, and the shadows recoiled as if burned. The Alpha King's eyes widened slightly. "It is responding," he said, almost to himself. "Its power? It knows." Lyria's pulse raced. The pup was small, but it had a force within it that she could feel, a presence that pushed back the darkness. She stared down at it, amazed and terrified at the same time. "You're stronger than I thought," she whispered. The shadows regrouped, circling again, but this time they were wary. The pup's tiny body glowed faintly, and Lyria realized something astonishing. The child was not afraid. It knew in some way beyond understanding that she would protect it, that the Alpha King would protect it, and that together they could face what came. "Hold it close," the king said. "Feel its rhythm, its heart. It is the key." Lyria did as he instructed, resting her palm lightly against the pup's chest. She could feel a steady, powerful heartbeat, a pulse that seemed to connect her, the child, and the king in a silent bond. The forest seemed to hum with energy, the shadows holding back just enough for them to breathe. For a moment, the three of them stood in silence, connected by something larger than themselves. Then, without warning, the shadows attacked again. This time, Lyria moved instinctively, ducking, rolling, and holding the pup tightly. She felt sparks of energy ripple through her, responding to her fear and determination. The pup's glow intensified, and a wave of force rippled outward, scattering the shadows back into the darkness. The king's mouth pressed into a thin line, his eyes wide with respect. "It is awakening faster than I expected," he said. "This child, it is extraordinary." Lyria's heart swelled with pride and awe. She had known the pup was special, but seeing it push back the darkness, seeing the connection they shared, it was more than she could have imagined. Yet the weight of responsibility pressed on her chest. Every flicker of the pup's power reminded her that danger was never far away. The shadows began to retreat, melting into the mist and darkness of the forest. Lyria let out a shaky breath, her body trembling from fear and relief. The pup yawned, curling closer to her, and she smiled faintly despite the lingering terror. "You are amazing," she whispered. "Both of you." She looked at the king, who gave her a small nod of approval. The distance between them felt less intimidating now, tempered by shared struggle and unspoken understanding. "We cannot linger," the king said, his tone serious. "They will return and others will come. We must move toward the ruins ahead. There, the pup can learn control, and we can prepare for what is coming." Lyria nodded, standing and adjusting the pup in her arms. She glanced toward the path the king indicated. The ruins were distant, shadowed, yet the forest seemed to part for them, as if the very trees recognized their importance. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. The journey was far from over, and the darkness would not give up easily. As they walked, the king began to speak of the ancient powers that ran through the forest and the bloodline. He explained that their ancestors had once ruled with balance and strength, but the misuse of power had brought calamity. The pup represented a chance to restore what had been lost, a bridge between the mistakes of the past and the hope of the future. Lyria listened carefully, absorbing every word. It was overwhelming, but also grounding. She realized that the pup's destiny was intertwined with hers. Every step, every choice, every act of courage mattered now. Not just for survival, but for something larger than she had ever imagined. Hours passed. The forest's twisted paths began to give way to softer moss and broken stone, signs that they were nearing the ruins the king had mentioned. The air felt charged with energy, and Lyria could feel the pup stir again, its glow brightening in response to the approaching sight. The ruins emerged through the mist, ancient and imposing. Crumbled walls and toppled pillars marked the place, but the air around it felt alive, thick with power. The Alpha King stopped at the entrance, glancing down at Lyria and the pup. "This is where we will begin," he said. "Here the child will learn. Here we will prepare, and here the forest will test you again. Be ready." Lyria tightened her grip on the pup, feeling its warmth and power pulse against her chest. She nodded, determination settling in her heart. "I am ready," she said quietly. The king gave a small, approving nod. "Good, but know this, nothing is simple in this forest. Danger is always close, and not every shadow can be defeated with strength alone. Sometimes, trust is the weapon you need most." Lyria met his gaze. For the first time since Kale had abandoned her, she felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps they could survive this night. Perhaps they could protect the pup. And perhaps she could find a way to trust again. The ruins loomed before them, silent and ancient, and the forest seemed to hold its breath. Something waited within, unseen but powerful, ready to challenge them. Cliffhanger. From the shadows of the ruins, a pair of glowing eyes watched them. The pup twitched, letting out a small, urgent cry. The Alpha King's eyes narrowed. "They are here," he whispered. "And this time, they will not hold back." The ruins were silent now, but the air trembled with unseen energy. Shadows clung to the broken pillars, shifting like living things, and the wind carried whispers of long-forgotten magic. Lyria tightened her grip on the pup, feeling its warmth and faint pulse of power. Its small body shivered slightly, as if it could sense the tension that hung over the place like a thick fog. The Alpha King moved beside her, steady and unshakable. His eyes scanned every corner, every shadow, every crack in the stone. He had faced many dangers in his long life, but even he seemed aware that this night would be different. This time the darkness had a purpose, and it would not be denied. "You must stay close," he said quietly, his voice steady, though his eyes betrayed concern. "The forces here are stronger than anything we have faced. They will test not just your courage, but your heart." Lyria nodded, though fear tightened in her chest. She had survived betrayal, the endless forest, and the unknown dangers of the shadows. But now, standing in the ruins, she felt the weight of the prophecy pressing down on her. She could not fail, not for herself, not for the pup, and not for the kingdom that depended on the child's future. Suddenly, a chilling howl echoed through the ruins. Shadows coalesced into dark, wolf-like forms, but twisted and monstrous, their eyes burning red, their teeth glinting in the faint moonlight. Lyria felt the pup stir in her arms, its small body quivering. She pressed it closer, feeling its heartbeat against her chest. "They have come," the king said, his voice low and controlled. "Remember what I taught you. Courage, focus, and trust. Trust in the pup and trust in yourself." The first shadow lunged. Lyria reacted instinctively, stepping forward and throwing herself between the creature and the pup. The king moved in tandem with her, his presence a shield and a weapon all at once. He struck with precision, his hands glowing faintly as ancient power flowed through him. The shadow yelped and recoiled, but more were coming, surrounding them, circling like predators waiting for a mistake. Lyria's heart pounded, but she forced herself to focus. The pup stirred again, glowing faintly, and she realized it was responding to her courage, to the protection she offered. She whispered softly, her voice trembling but firm. "We are together. We will not be afraid. We will survive." The pup's glow intensified, a warm golden light spreading outward, pushing back the shadows. They hissed and shrieked, retreating slightly from the brilliance. Lyria felt a surge of hope. The child was more than a symbol of the prophecy. It was alive, aware, and powerful. The Alpha King's eyes widened slightly in respect. "It is learning faster than I anticipated," he said. "Its power is responding to your bond. Protect it, nurture it, and it will protect you in return." But even as he spoke, more shadows surged from the darkness, faster and more determined. Lyria knew they could not hold forever. She glanced around the ruins, searching for any advantage, any place to turn the tide. "Follow me," the king said, moving toward a crumbled wall. "We can use the ruins to our advantage. Height and cover will give us a chance." Lyria obeyed, carefully stepping over broken stone and moss-covered debris, the pup secure in her arms. The shadows followed, their red eyes glinting with malice. They were relentless, but the ruins offered narrow paths and choke points that allowed them to fight strategically. The battle was intense. Lyria fought with every ounce of strength she had, her movements instinctive, guided by the Alpha King's calm presence. The pup glowed brighter with each strike, its small energy pulses pushing the shadows back. For a moment it felt as if the ruins themselves were alive, responding to the child's power and the courage of the two who protected it. At one point, a particularly large shadow lunged toward Lyria, teeth bared. She stumbled backward, fear flaring in her chest, but the pup let out a small cry, and a burst of golden light erupted from it. The shadow yelped and vanished, leaving only a wisp of smoke. The Alpha King's expression softened as he looked at her. "See, you are stronger than you believe. And so is the pup. Together you are unstoppable." Lyria's chest heaved, a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. She had never felt such a surge of pride and fear at the same time. Her mind flashed briefly to Kale, to the betrayal that had driven her into the forest. She realized now that fear had always been Kale's weakness, but it would not be hers. She would protect the child, and she would face every shadow without faltering. The shadows began to retreat, but Lyria sensed it was not over. There was a presence darker and older that had yet to appear. The ruins were silent once more, but the tension remained, a heavy weight pressing down on them. The Alpha King stepped closer, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You have done well," he said quietly. "But the true test is ahead. The child's destiny is tied not just to survival but to choice. You must guide it, teach it, and protect it from those who would manipulate its power." Lyria nodded, her resolve hardening. "I will," she said. "I will protect it, no matter what." For a moment there was a silence, broken only by the faint rustle of leaves in the ruins. Lyria glanced down at the pup, seeing its small glowing eyes looking back at her. In that moment, she felt a connection stronger than anything she had ever known, a bond of trust, of protection, and of love that did not depend on acceptance or approval. The Alpha King's gaze softened as he watched them. "You are remarkable," he said, "stronger than many who have lived 1,000 years. And perhaps, this child will need more than power. It will need guidance, and that guidance may come from you alone." Lyria's heart ached, but not with fear. It was a deep, steady ache, the kind that comes from understanding one's purpose. She realized that Kale's rejection, painful as it had been, had forced her to discover her own strength. She was no longer the one who had been abandoned. She was a protector, a teacher, and a guide. And she would not fail. The night pressed on, and the ruins seemed to settle around them as if acknowledging their courage. The Alpha King motioned for her to follow him deeper into the ruins, to a small chamber partially hidden by fallen stones. There the child could be trained, and they could prepare for the coming challenges. As they walked, Lyria felt a strange sense of peace settle over her. The fear was still there, but it was tempered by understanding and determination. She had faced betrayal, fear, and darkness, and she had survived. Now she would face destiny itself, armed with courage, trust, and the bond she shared with her child. But even in that moment of quiet, a shadow lingered at the edge of the ruins, unseen but aware. It had watched the battle, studied their strengths, and waited for the perfect moment to strike. The Alpha King had seen it too, his eyes narrowing, but he said nothing, letting Lyria focus on the pup. "You will need to be ready," he said finally, his voice low and serious. "The true test is coming, and this time it will not be a fight you can win with strength alone." Lyria nodded, holding the pup close. She felt its warmth, its pulse of energy, and its quiet courage. Together they had survived the shadows of the forest and the ruins. Together they could face whatever came next. And as the first light of dawn began to pierce the misty forest, Lyria realized something that gave her a strange, quiet hope. She was no longer alone. The Alpha King had earned her trust. The pup had awakened its power. And even the darkness itself seemed to acknowledge that their bond was not easily broken. But the whispering shadows of the ruins promised that this was only the beginning. Cliffhanger. From the far corner of the ruins, a figure stepped forward, partially cloaked in shadow. Its eyes glowed with recognition and intent. The pup stirred violently, sensing the presence. The Alpha King's expression hardened. "So, the one we feared has arrived," he said. "And now the choice must be made." The ruins were heavy with silence, yet the air crackled with energy. Shadows clung to the edges of broken walls, stretching and flickering as if alive, waiting. Lyria stood in the center of the chamber, the pup cradled carefully in her arms. Its golden eyes glowed brighter than ever, pulsing with a power that seemed to hum in harmony with the forest itself. The Alpha King stepped beside her, his presence steady and commanding. "This is it," he said quietly. "The one who has haunted the edges of the forest, the one who would destroy the prophecy, has finally revealed themselves. Prepare yourself." From the far corner of the ruins, a figure emerged. Cloaked in dark shadows, it moved with a calm but menacing grace. Its eyes glowed red, a reflection of centuries of malice and power. Lyria felt a chill run down her spine, yet the pup stirred in response, its tiny body glowing with warmth and energy. Lyria inhaled deeply, steadying herself. She had faced shadows, monsters, and betrayal, but this moment felt different. This was more than a test of strength. It was a test of courage, trust, and the bond that had grown between her and her child. The Alpha King's eyes narrowed. "Kyle," he said, his voice a mixture of command and disbelief. The cloaked figure paused, and the shadows seemed to pull back slightly. Lyria's breath caught. Kale, the mate who had abandoned her and the pup, stood before them. His expression was unreadable, a mix of regret, fear, and determination. He had come, drawn by the power of the child he had once rejected and by the forces he could no longer ignore. "You returned?" Lyria whispered, clutching the pup tightly. Kale's gaze softened, though his stance remained defensive. "I had to," he admitted. "I saw what I had done, the mistake I made. Leaving you and the child. I couldn't let it face danger alone. I need to make this right." The Alpha King's stance was tense, yet his eyes softened slightly. "Then prove it," he said. "Not just with words, but with courage. The child's destiny depends on all of us standing together." The shadows began to surge, sensing hesitation and doubt. They hissed and moved like living smoke, closing in on them. Lyria's heart raced, but she focused on the pup, feeling the small but steady pulse of energy between them. It was not just a child, it was a bridge between past mistakes and future hope, and it responded to their bond. "Stay close," the king said, positioning himself strategically, "and trust the pup. Its power is greater than you realize." The pup stirred, letting out a small glowing cry that seemed to fill the ruins with light. The shadows recoiled, shrieking and twisting in anger. Lyria felt a surge of determination. She was no longer the one who had been abandoned. She was a protector, a guide, and a mother. Her courage and love were part of the child's strength. Kale stepped forward, his hands glowing faintly as he drew on powers he had long ignored. "Together," he said, his voice steady, "we can end this. We protect the child, we protect the prophecy. Together." Lyria nodded, feeling a strange sense of relief mixed with caution. She did not fully trust him yet, but she could see the sincerity in his eyes. And in that moment, trust became a choice she would make for the pup's sake and for the destiny that awaited them. The shadows lunged. The battle that followed was fierce. The ruins trembled with the clash of light and dark. Lyria moved with purpose, guided by instinct and determination, her small voice whispering encouragement to the pup. The child responded, glowing brighter with each pulse. Pushing back the shadows with radiant waves of energy, the Alpha King fought with unmatched skill, striking with precision, his hands glowing with ancient power that ripped through the darkness. And Kael, fighting beside them for the first time with full conviction, unleashed a power that he had once feared, now tempered by responsibility and love. Together, the four of them, Lyria, the pup, the Alpha King, and Kyle, formed a force the shadows could not anticipate. The ruins glowed with the pup's energy, golden light washing over broken stones and toppled pillars. The shadows shrieked and twisted, but they could not penetrate the bond that held this unlikely group together. At one point, a massive shadow surged toward Lyria, faster than she could react. The pup stirred violently, its glow flaring, and a wave of light exploded outward. The shadow recoiled, then vanished in a burst of dark mist. Lyria's chest heaved, but she realized something profound. The pup's power was not just in strength, it was in connection. It responded to trust, love, and courage. Kale glanced at her, his eyes filled with regret and hope. "I see it now," he whispered. "The child, and you, are more than I ever realized." The Alpha King's eyes softened as he looked at them both. "This is why I recognize the child," he said. "This bond, this courage, it is what makes the prophecy real. It is not just power, it is love and trust. That is what will save our world. The shadows gave a final desperate surge, their red eyes blazing, but the pup glowed with full brilliance now, its energy radiating outward. Lyria held it close, feeling the warmth, the heartbeat, and the spirit that connected them all. Together they stood firm, and then, with a final shriek that echoed through the ruins, the shadows dissolved into mist, vanishing as though they had never existed. Silence returned, but it was a silence filled with triumph, relief, and awe. Lyria sank to her knees, holding the pup close. "We did it," she whispered, tears slipping down her cheeks. The pup nuzzled her, tiny body still glowing softly. Cale knelt beside her, his hand brushing against hers. "We did," he said quietly. "And I am sorry for everything. I see now what I lost by leaving you." The Alpha King stepped forward, placing a hand gently on Cale's shoulder. "Redemption is not given, it is earned," he said. "You have earned it tonight. By standing with them, by protecting the child, and by choosing to face the darkness." Kyle nodded solemnly, a sense of humility and determination settling over him. Lyria looked at him, seeing the change, the willingness to make amends. It was not an easy forgiveness, but it was a start, a beginning of trust rebuilt. The ruins seemed to sigh around them, the wind carrying away the last remnants of shadow. The forest beyond whispered softly, a song of life and renewal. Lyria felt a sense of peace she had not known in years. The pup stirred in her arms, glowing faintly, its energy calm but strong. "You have done well," the Alpha King said, his eyes scanning the ruins one last time. "The prophecy has begun to unfold, but this is only the beginning. There will be challenges ahead, but you now have the courage, the bond, and the knowledge to face them." Lyria looked at the pup, then at Cale, then at the Alpha King. She felt a strange warmth in her heart, a mixture of relief, pride, and hope. "We will be ready," she said quietly. "Together." Cale nodded, his eyes softening as he looked at the child. "Together," he echoed. He reached out slowly, and Lyria allowed him to touch the pup gently. The child responded, glowing brighter, as if acknowledging the trust and bond now forming between them. For the first time since Cale had left, Lyria felt a sense of balance. The past could not be erased, but the present offered redemption, strength, and hope. The child's destiny was no longer just a prophecy. It was alive, and it was theirs to protect. The Alpha King watched them, pride and satisfaction in his expression. "You have shown courage, love, and wisdom," he said. "These are the true powers that will guide this child, and through it, the kingdom will be restored." As dawn broke over the forest, golden light filtered into the ruins. The shadows were gone, the air was clear, and the pup's glow harmonized with the sunlight. Lyria felt a sense of serenity and determination unlike anything she had ever known. She was a mother, a protector, and a guide. She had faced betrayal, fear, and darkness, and she had survived. Cale stood beside her, his expression humbled yet resolute. The Alpha King remained close, vigilant but calm, a guardian and mentor, and the pup, the heart of the prophecy, stirred in her arms, glowing softly, a symbol of hope, courage, and the future they would build together. For the first time, Lyria realized that destiny was not just about power, it was about the bonds we forge, the courage we embrace, and the love we choose to protect. And as they stepped from the ruins into the new day, the forest seemed to welcome them, alive with possibilities and promise. Together they walked forward, ready for whatever the future might bring. Ending note. Cliffhanger. Hopeful. Though the darkness had been defeated, whispers of old threats lingered in the far corners of the forest. Yet Lyria, Cale, the pup, and the Alpha King stood together, united in trust, courage, and love. The prophecy was alive, and so was hope, ready to face the challenges yet to come.